So, the Battle of Cato Nemoidia, which we discussed on Battle Analysis last week, ended with the Republic forces withdrawing to respond to a terrorist attack on Coruscant, the Jedi Temple bombing. And I figured today we'd take a closer look at the Jedi Temple bombing, and more importantly, what it means for the relationship between the Jedi and the civilian population, and the ongoing Republic war effort. I'm Colin, and this is Sci-Fi Deep Dive. Remember, if you enjoyed this video, to head down below and hit that subscribe button. So the Jedi Temple bombing, for those who don't know, was a terrorist attack carried out at the Jedi Temple during the later stages of the Clone Wars. During this bombing, a explosive device was set off in one of the hangars in the Jedi Temple, and it was a relatively high casualty event, especially for Coruscant. So the attack itself was particularly devastating, more because it was a strike on Coruscant than the actual damage done. After all, it seems like it just destroyed a handful of gunships and light support craft. And it did cause some significant casualties within the Jedi Order and their support forces, but the more impactful element was the fact that it was on Coruscant. It was a sort of sign that the war had come to Coruscant. But this attack wasn't carried out by the Separatists. Instead, it was carried out by civilian operatives, and ultimately members of the Jedi Order themselves. Now, I'm really not going to get into the perpetrator behind the attack itself. The attack was ultimately carried out by Barisafi, who was disillusioned by the position the Jedi had taken in the war, which was not an uncommon sentiment. Instead, I'm going to focus on the public response to the bombing, which was rather dramatic. Outside the temple, we see protests to the war effort and the Jedi's involvement in the war effort, right on the steps of the temple. I can't think of a more powerful symbol that the Republic's populace is turning on the war than that, really. So to see the population of the Republic protesting on the steps of the Jedi Temple, opposed to the activities of the Jedi Order, is a strong shift from what we saw at the beginning of the war, where the Republic's population was generally swept up in a war fever, and all in favor of escalating the conflict and taking this fight to the Separatists. But after 2 years of war, the public's sort of willingness to keep fighting is starting to wear thin. And this attack on the temple just showed that the war is really affecting the civilian population of the Republic, which is starting to view the Jedi in an increasingly antagonistic viewpoint. Now, as many will likely point out, this is not by coincidence, this is by design. The goal of Chancellor Palpatine in his attempt to usurp the Jedi from their position of power is to cause the galaxy to doubt the credibility of the Jedi, and the war is a huge part of that. But that being said, the shift is still happening, and it's becoming more and more apparent, even to the Jedi themselves, who were rather oblivious to it in the early stages of the conflict. At the start of the war, it was believed that this would be a relatively quick, small to medium-scale conflict that would be over within a year and see a Republic victory. After all, the clones seemed to be a substantial fighting force, and on Geonosis they proved themselves very capable in battle. However, 2 years into a massive galactic war, and that doesn't seem like a obvious outcome anymore. It's entirely possible, from the perspective of a civilian within the Republic, that this war may end in a Republic defeat, and they will have suffered all of their hardship and loss for nothing. So, at the end of the day, while the Jedi Temple bombing ultimately had a huge effect on the Jedi Order and the way they view their relationship with the civilian population of the galaxy and the Republic itself, and it had a massive effect on the personal relations of those involved, it served as a fairly significant visual indication of the relationship between the people of the galaxy and the Jedi, and the general popular opinion of the Jedi Order at this time. And ultimately, it's these sentiments that would allow things like Order 66 to happen. After all, without public support, it's unlikely that Palpatine would hold on to power shortly following his purge of the Jedi. He had to convince the galaxy that the Jedi were not a force for good, but in fact a destructive element of society that could cause significant damage. And this whole war was orchestrated to demonstrate that. And the civilian population's sort of disregard of the Jedi and distrust of the Jedi goes hand in hand with their feelings immediately following the end of the conflict that allowed the Galactic Empire to come to power. If you'd like to learn about why the civilian population supported the rise of the Galactic Empire, I'll leave a link up here to my video on that. And I want you to let me know down in the comments whether you think at this point in the conflict it would have made sense for the Jedi to withdraw from their military positions to try to reestablish their peacekeeping perception, Or do you think it makes sense for them to just stick it out for the rest of the war and worry about damage control after the conflict is over? Last but not least, if you have anything else you'd like to see me cover in Star Wars, you can let me know down below in the comments. Remember, if you enjoyed this video, to head down below, hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell icon so you get notified when I upload new videos. So for Sci-Fi Deep Dive, I'm Colin, and I will see you next time.